Bavaria,
Hello.
who's that short woman you're standing next to?
Yes. All right. Good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, April 11th, 2024 meeting of the City of Eugene Police Commission. We will have just a quick review of our code of conduct. We do follow Robert's rules. And so for commissioners who would like a turn to speak, please raise your hand either on camera or at the table or virtually on the Zoom. And then also let's try to be mindful of the time allotted because we do have, as always, a full agenda and we always have a ton of conversation going on with great opinions and ideas that come through. And then for those in the room, our mic is apparently on the TV. So for everybody except Chief Skinner, we have to shout at the TV. We will start off with reviewing the agenda. This evening, the chief has informed me that he will be stepping out momentarily for a family obligation. We will use that time to pivot to a recommendation made by Commissioner Booker, which will be to read out the commendations that have been provided to us in our meeting packet. Pending no objections to the agenda, I believe we can move to oh, good. I do see Bonnie Dominguez on the Zoom. Chief, I believe we have a certificate for Commissioner Dominguez.
You do have a certificate for Bonnie. I'm going to show this. I should run it up here right next to the camera so you can actually see this. But there's some on this certificate of appreciation for Bonnie that I'd like to read right now. Bonnie Dominguez, your work with Eugene Police Commission has served the community honorably since July 27th of 2020. You provided valuable insight on countless police policy and procedure reviews and subject matter, including law enforcement, mental health and wellness, downtown safety, public safety cameras, use of less lethal force for crowd control, diversity, equity, and inclusion, community outreach, and recruitment efforts to hire officers of color and gender inclusivity. You were instrumental in advocating for transparent, community-centered approaches to policing, which helped the Eugene Police Department in creating a safer and more inclusive approach to policing. Your stewardship, passionate perspective, and collaboration has been a great asset to the commission and will be missed. Because of the great work that you have accomplished for the Police Commission and for the Eugene Police Department, you are hereby awarded the Eugene Police Department Certificate of Appreciation, and we want to thank you for your service, Bonnie.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
We'll make sure we find a way to get this to you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I will be by, so I could also stop by.
Great, we'll have Holly coordinate that with you. Thank you, Chief.
Do you have any comments from commissioners? I would like to say farewell or...
Oh, okay, sure. And did we have any comments from the commissioners regarding former Commissioner Dominguez? Don't leave, Bonnie.
Okay.
Commissioner Clemens, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. Bonnie, I just want to say you're an inspiration. Please keep being you. I look up to you so much and really hope that we can connect in future spaces and keep changing the world together. Appreciate you, Bonnie.
Commissioner Booker.
I just want to say thank you again, Bonnie. You and Dallas were kind of paramount in me joining along with Scott. And I thank you for everything that you've done prior to me getting here. And even while I was here, I think I spoke last time how much I admire you and how thankful we are for your voice. So it'll be greatly missed. And I wish you well in whatever you're going to do next. And they're going to be very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yes, Bonnie, thank you. I wanted to appreciate you because I really admired your stick-to-itness and your honesty and your ability to bring a really unique perspective and point of view to the conversation and have it be heard so that it actually had an impact how we thought about things. I can think of many times where I was thinking about something and then you would talk and have a different perspective about it and went, oh, I never thought about that. So I kind of modified my position, and that's the hallmark of a really good person that participates in and has an impact. So I just want to let you know that, Bonnie.
Oh my goodness, thank you. And just so you know, I felt the same way. I'm like, oh, I didn't think about it that way.
Judge Lehman.
Thank you, Bonnie. I just want to say, from the minute I started sitting at this table, the impressive thing was your energy. And to me, it was always, you were like the AOC of the table. And I mean that very, with affection, not in a very positive way. Yeah, you just brought an energy that and inform the discussion. And it's also a chance in the pitch to my fellow commissioners. Like, I never met Bonnie. Like, I never met you in person. And we were
All right.
at this table for like 2.5 years or something, 3 years almost. So like, I hope that in the future as a group, we can come together, and I don't want the other members to not meet anyone. So, and I look forward,
agree.
Bonnie, I do look forward to meeting you. I'm sure I will. It just didn't happen at this table. So
I do too.
Councilor
Yeah,
Eugene.
so I totally agree with what everyone else said, and I just wanted to add one more thing that really impressed me about you, Bonnie, is that you really pushed us to do more community outreach, and you showed up at events to do tabling, and you just are really good at connecting with people and introducing the group to the community. And I think that really pushed the rest of us to do more as well. And that will be missed. And I hope we continue to do a good job of that with you gone. And hopefully you can remind us if we're not. But that was really helpful for the group, and I appreciate that.
Officer Tester.
Kind of just echoing what everybody already said, Bonnie, but I do want to highlight as well that you were the first one to take me up on a virtual ride along. I think that was back in like 2021. So kind of being in my car virtually, it was interesting. So thank you for that. Thank you for always looking at things with a critical eye. I think that's super important, especially as it relates to policy.
It's my honor. I guess I just wanted to say I feel so lucky to have experienced being a police commissioner with every single person that has served in the past and is currently on the commission right now. You're all doing wonderful work. Every single one of you. Officer Tester, I'm glad that you're back. And I just really appreciated all the conversations that we had and how we were able to talk about things in such a way where we were all able to civilly discuss things, even though we disagreed. I think that was wonderful. I know some of you are already in office, and that's wonderful. Stay there. And for those of you that are not, I believe that you could do well. You're doing such great work, and I would vote for any one of you because you're all wonderful. So please keep pushing. Take advantage of the fact that Senator Manning said that he would be willing to basically mentor and hear anything that you have to say with regard to like laws and all that. Just I wish that I could have learned more from him. I think you all should do that. Don't let that connection go. And like you're always saying, you should meet. Like I really regret that I didn't meet some of you. So, and that I should have met you more. I finally bought my first car, so that would have been wonderful because I would have been able to drive to the meeting. But anyway, so like I said, you all are amazing. Stay in touch. And for those of you that I said that I would talk to, I finally moved in, so hopefully I'll be able to like actually talk to you. So thank you so much for the honor and the certificate and everything. And stay well.
Commissioner Mogart.
Yeah, Bonnie, before you go, please, as somebody who has met you, as somebody who has had some kind of we used to stand up comedy together. I was super excited that your name came across the applications. Glad you were able to join us. Sorry to see you go. And I know that we've done other work together besides this commission. So I know that we'll do work together again in the future. And thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Bonnie, I echo what all of them said, but I will definitely say that you are absolutely an inspiration to me, even though I'm older than you. But as a woman of color, in particularly in the sphere that you're working in and being an activist in, I very highly respect and admire the work that you're doing.
Same.
Right, we will move to the recap of our previous meeting that was held in March. We started off with a tribute to the late chair, Dallas Boggs. We had a discussion from our independent city auditor, Leah Pitcher, and we had a recommendation of EPD having a cultural audit. And that has been brought to the table this evening as part of our agenda for further discussion, so we can fine tune that one. For reviewing the minutes from our March meeting, we do have at least one edit that I'm aware of. On page 2 of the minutes, we had a motion that actually did pass per Robert's rules, and I know that I was probably the one who was mistaken thinking that it didn't pass, but we had more yay votes to approve the minutes than nay votes. So that motion actually did pass. And I would also like to thank Lydia for adding the Zoom recording time markers. Those have been very helpful going through the recording of the last meeting. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes with the edit as far as the first motion to approve the previous meeting's minutes?
Move to approve. With edits.
Thank you, Councilor Ye. Is there a second? Thank you, Councilor Zelenka. I don't think we need to discuss it because we just discussed it. So all in favor of approving the minutes with the edit for last month's meeting, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Please say nay. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes are approved with that edit. We have liaison reports this evening. I'd like to start with Judge Lyman for Civilian Review Board.
Thank you. The Civilian Review Board met on Tuesday, a couple of days ago, and the case review was not pleasant from the perspective of the subject matter. It was a patrol officer and 8 allegations of professional misconduct, essentially harassment type behaviors, sexual harassment type behaviors. It was an instance where we were able to gender identify at CRB, and it was a male officer, and women were the complaining witnesses. So the CRB kind of had a spirited discussion that a year ago we had a similar case with a supervisor, not a patrol officer, and kind of riffing on the discussions at the 2 tables between this commission and that board, that anecdotally now and what we have heard at this table is enough to raise an awareness. And at the last meeting, at our last meeting, we asked to discuss the idea of a cultural audit, and I see it's on the agenda. And I think given that it's appropriate, the time, it wasn't a coincidence that CRB examined this case, but the case was not what we should see in a professional organization in 2024, and that there were a lot of questions asked at the CRB table, and it's not going to go away. So I think the challenge for us as a group here is to figure out the proper role of police commission in seeing that this particular issue that's risen up here gets addressed. So that's the liaison report from CRB. Thank you.
What was the CRB's determination?
So the cases are, adjudication recommendations come from the supervisor of the group of officers, then the deputy chief makes a recommendation, and then Chief Skinner often then opines as well, signs off on it if he's available. In this case, troubling to CRB, the supervisor only found enough to sustain 3 of the 8, and Deputy Chief Adams found soundly for 8 of the 8, and Chief Skinner agreed with his deputy chief. So, and one of the things that CRB talked about is, and the auditor, who's data driven, and that's a really good thing, said that they would take a look at is to see if there's a disconnect in the process here where the supervisors have a different idea of what's appropriate, what the professional standards are, and is there a reason that DC Adams is it true that it's being reversed, or the recommendation is different often enough to ask the question, is that problematic, or a training issue, or other things? So long-winded, but that's the answer. Thank you.
I believe Commissioner Booker has a question for you.
Oh yes, thank you, Judge, for your report. I have a quick question. And this is, anybody can answer this question. Is the professional standards fall under policy for us? Or is that connected to policy with us?
The short answer is no. A lot of the policies that we review need to be updated to become in line with standards, but the Department of Standards is its own state body.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Because only reason I asked is the judge said that we need to figure out as a body how we're gonna, incorporate ourselves into the bigger issue. So I just wanted to ask if that professional standards had anything to do with us. But thank you for clarifying.
Let me further clarify. The role of professional standards within the Eugene Police Department is squarely within our policy manual, and squarely you have the purview to take a look at those and make recommendations. What Sean is talking about is the Department of Public Safety Standards and Training, which is a state body, which is not inside our purview. Now, what I would say is the nuance to that is so much of the policy that exists in professional standards is policy that is generated through collaborative and collective bargaining with our union, that you would not be able to affect that change. But as far as administrative-ish types of things, you're welcome to break that open, take a look at it, and see if you have any questions about why we do what we do. It's a fairly robust policy with lots of timelines and information. But yeah, you could take a look at that if you want to. Yes.
And
Okay,
some of the union stuff, just to kind of elaborate on that, that's really why union has a seat right here, is because any policy technically could have something that's bargainable. So that's really why the union chair is here too. So realistically, every single policy could have something that's bargainable.
All right, thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that.
Judge Lyman.
Thank you, Chief. And I use professional standards, but CRB's purview is the policies of did an officer violate the policy, a policy or practice of the department. So that's what I was talking about, not the State Department of Standards.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Parham.
Yeah, I was just curious if the chief could repeat what he called the standards, and that's department wide.
So within the organization, it is it's internal affairs and professional standards within the department is what it's called.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
For Human Rights Commission, Commissioner Lemons.
Thank you, Chair. Sadly, I have to report this was a very high number month that we went through. I also want to shout out the new officer that presented. His name is escaping me right now. but this was the most information that the Human Rights Commission has been given. So I really appreciate him. So we had one incident regarding graffiti anti-LGBTQ plus. There was insufficient evidence to keep going with the case, so that is suspended at the moment. There was a victim who had a window broken. She believed that it was because of the bumper stickers that she had, although that was also suspended due to insufficient evidence. There is a current case going on with it's a stalking issue against someone within the disabled community. Officers are currently looking for a suspect or for the suspect. I think the suspect has been identified. There was some tires slashed at the Asian market, but due to similar concerns, like I previously mentioned, lack of evidence, that was suspended as well. There was anti-LGBTQ plus related damage or assumed that way. There was windows broken, and that has actually been taken up by the Oregon DOJ. So that is pending further investigation. There was also an egging of a house that has a very prominent religious sign in their front yard. And that is that is currently open and assigned. There was also an incident at Willamette High School where there was racist paint and some other stuff done to a car. The victim is currently deciding whether or not to press charges. The officer is trying their best to move forward with it. And then the last one comes from 2 reports ago, so I'm just going to read it straight from the notes. So regarding the case previously mentioned by Commissioner Booker, where a 15-year-old black male student from Willamette was walking home from school and was violently beaten by another student. The victim was accosted by a group of people, including the aggressor, who is noted to be a white male, also age 15. The victim was noted to decline the fight and was coerced into the altercation. There was no mutual combat. The offender was arrested for felony assault, coercion, and criminal misconduct. The case is still open and under investigation. So, very, very heavy report there. And then when it comes to my commissioner comments, I just wanted to give a big thank you for the agenda today about the cultural audit and public safety cameras. Appreciate leadership. And I wanted to give a big shout out to our new notes taker, Lydia. Is that correct?
Yes.
Those timestamps are amazing. They really help us, and I think they help the public. So thank you.
And Scott, just super quick, for the graffiti marking at Willamette High School, there was an arrest made in that, just to provide an update on that one. That was my case.
Awesome. Thank you. The Human Rights Commission meets like 24 days before we meet. So I would love to hear that update. But thank you.
Absolutely.
Councilor Ye?
Thank you. So council had our interviews for board and commission applicants. So we heard from, and I think I got them all, so Alan can remind me if I don't, but 8 human rights, citizen review board, toxics, budget, and sustainability. People came and talked to us about their applications. As you guys all know, police commission works a little differently. So we don't hear from those folks at council, those go through the mayor. And just so you all know, our votes are due on April 14th for that. And then the final decisions get made in June. So that is that. I also wanted to just highlight a couple upcoming things that you might be interested in. On April 22nd, we have a work session on finance update and revenue options, which could impact the police department. You might be interested in listening to how the finances are going. And then May 8th is the CRB and Police Auditor Annual Report that'll be coming to the council as well. So just wanted to highlight those.
And just a reminder to the commission that the police auditor will come to the commission and do her annual report. So we will get to hear that and ask questions at some point. So
Yeah, we get our own turn, but if you want to watch it at council, you can.
what date was that, Counselor?
May 8th.
Thank you.
You can get double of her if you would like.
Counselor Zelenko?
I'm good. I was going to say what Councilor Ye said, so thank you.
Okay, we'll go to commissioners' comments, and we'll start with Commissioner Mogart.
No comments today.
Thank you. Counselor Ye, any commissioner comments?
Oh, no, I'm good. Thank you.
Judge Lyman?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, I'm not at home right now, so forgive my lack of camera. And thanks, Chief, for correcting my misunderstanding about what Booker was asking.
Commissioner Booker?
No comments.
Counselor Zelenka?
No comments.
Commissioner Parham?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about September 1st, 2024, and that is going to be the day that hard drugs become a misdemeanor again. And under the new law, small amounts of hard drugs will be criminally prosecuted and can result in up to 6 months in jail. The governor has given sweeping powers to counties to create deflection programs. So my question is, what type of deflection programs does the department think they're going to be working in? How does the city and the department foresee the partnerships for providing diversion services to addicts? What type of protections and bias trainings are going to go to officers in the streets so that we don't see Black and brownness criminalized and unfairly targeted? And then I would also ask the department to advise to what their strategy will be and what type of challenges they expect to experience after September 1st. And is there a way for the department and the city to get access to Measure 110 funding in order to provide deflection programs? Thank you.
You want to wait till Chief's?
Yep.
Thank you.
Let's just wait till the Chief's comments.
Okay. For my commissioner comments, I would like to say that before spring break, I had the opportunity to watch Commissioner Lemons present to the Neighborhood Leader Council. And he provided us with a presentation on how to accommodate individuals with disabilities, both visible and invisible. And it was a very compelling and educational presentation. And so kind of tagging off of what Commissioner Dominguez and quite a few others have mentioned, I very highly recommend taking any opportunities to observe and support our fellow commissioners in their element, their natural habitat per se. I was very impressed by the information that Scott Lemons brought to the Neighborhood Leaders Council, and I would love to see more things like that. We all bring a bunch of strengths to the table, and so I think the more interaction that we have outside of this table on the second Thursday of the month, I think can only help us become stronger. We will move into the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee update. That is still a mouthful every single time we say that one. I did ask Holly to help procure some draft verbiage for a return to work policy for officers involved in critical incidents. And so I asked Holly to work with Sergeant Barong and the chief about pulling some similar policies from other agencies also in the state of Oregon that we can kind of compare and bring to the commission for recommendation. And then Commissioner Parham is going to give us a report on the presentation we had from our special guest.
Correct. So we were able to speak to Dr. Boos, who gave us an update on the status of the COP grants program. And so the COP grants program stands for Community Oriented Policing Services. And so last year, EPD applied for a grant because of the lack of guaranteed confidentiality for sworn officers reporting to non-medical professionals. So this year, the department decided to ask for a specific grant that would circle around mental health wellness. And so they're asking directly for mental health services to be provided either annually or biannually. Dr. Bus couldn't give us dialed in all the way specifics because there's still some particulars that have to be ironed out, including if it will be access to a mental health professional either annually or biannually. And there's also questions around cost. So the maximum amount of funding that can be available is $200,000. And so if that $200,000 is available over 2 years, it'll look a lot different than $200,000 being available for 1 year. And so the COP grants specifically target officers, crime scene technicians, call takers, and what it tries to do is connect these employees with a person who is trained in mental health advocacy with officers. So they have a proficiency and an experience level working with police officers. And then this would also, the grant also speaks to the ability of the department to keep this information confidential and keep it housed in a different site. And part of this grant is going to be focusing on suicide awareness and prevention training, as well as financial health training. And they're also trying to see if there will be money in the budget that will allow for loved one or for family members to be able to take advantage of this grant as well. And like I said, meetings would occur off campus. All information would be occurred off campus. And it would need to be held with a medical professional that has a law enforcement cultural competency. And so they're still trying to iron out particulars. It would be cool though if we would be able to provide some type of support and some type of draft or memo that we could create to show that we were in support of the grant.
Thank you, Commissioner Parham. In particular, we've been asked, the subcommittee has been asked, and I would assume Police Commission in general, to consider ways that we can demonstrate our support to City Council regarding budgeting for years afterwards. Part of the determination of whether or not the grant is awarded has to do with being able to demonstrate, being able to sustain the services that are provided after those 2 years of the funding have been exhausted. And so we will continue looking into that and how we can make recommendations to bring to the city councilors. We'll move into the chief's report.
Well, good evening to everybody. Let me just go over a couple of high-level things that are going on in the department, and then I'll talk about ballot measure 110 a little bit, and see if I can answer Commissioner Parham's questions a little bit. So we are excited in the sense that we have 23 police officer candidates in background right now. It's the largest number of police candidates we've had in a long time. We will wait and see. I'm not going to get too excited until we get everybody through backgrounds. We run about a 50% success rate on backgrounds with respect to that. In addition, we have 5 dispatchers that are going through psych right now, which means they've had job offers, and we're going to go through the psychological evaluation with them. And that's another real area of need within our organization. And so we're very, very hopeful and excited about the potential new hires that we have. We swore in 5 new officers last week. They're with us now, waiting to go to the academy later on this month. We have officers at the academy. Tomorrow I go up to DPSST for dispatch graduation. So it feels like that's all we do is recruit and hire right now. But it's needed. We're down 24 officers, we're down 10 dispatchers. Thanks to kind of the leadership of the city and city council, that as we deal with some difficult decisions around budget, one of the things that I feel very supported in is the fact that the core of our mission of being able to pick up the phone when it rings and send somebody when somebody needs us is being preserved as in some of that decision making around finances. So I'm feeling really good about that. We have a new captain starting on Monday. His name is Jake Burke. He is from Salem. He's a 26-year veteran of Salem and comes with a ton of experience in investigations. He will start in our investigations unit. And so that will be really good to get some outside perspective. And it's always good for an organization to make sure that we're blending both internal and external perspectives when we think about leadership. So we're excited to have Jake coming on board. I will be next week, I will be gone to our statewide Chiefs conference. Of all places, it's Pendleton. So I'm going to be going over to Pendleton. And the reason I bring that up is because one of the things that we will be spending time doing as a statewide association is spending some time talking about being prepped and some of the challenges around ballot measure 110 as that takes effect on September 1st. And we have the way the bill was written was to provide for a deflection program, a voluntary deflection program for those counties that wish to provide that. So some of the short answers for Commissioner Parham is the city has no access to state money under ballot measure 110. All of the money that's available is only available to the counties. And it's available in a few different buckets. It's available for criminal defense. It's available for prosecution. It's available for parole probation supervision, and it's available for competitive grants for deflection programs. So the county has reached out to us, and we're going to be engaged in a conversation with them about what a deflection program could look like with respect to that. So I know that this county is interested in doing something. What that something is, we don't know yet, but it would look and feel likely kind of a blend between DUI diversion, which already is in place, and someday, hopefully, the stabilization center that gets built where we would take people instead of jail that are suffering from mental illness or behavioral health issues that commit low-level offenses. So it would be something like that. What we don't know is it going to be a location that we would take somebody to, or if it would be somebody that would respond to us and take that person off of our hands and kind of a warm handoff and take them to some level of service. We're not far enough down the track to know what that looks like yet. So what this will look like for us, yes, September 1st, there'll be an unclassified misdemeanor, which is technically an arrestable offense. Having been doing this for a long time and remember operationally the time where all of these things were a C felony, and then it became an A misdemeanor, and then it became an E violation, and now it's a U misdemeanor. There'll be a tremendous amount of discretion exercised in the field by officers on whether or not a custody arrest is appropriate, or if there's any other coexisting criminal behavior that we need to pay attention to, or more likely than not, a citation in lieu of custody in the field for those individuals. The jail, the attaching of the jail time to any of these offenses is not designed to be for your first-time offenders. What it's designed to be is up to 6 months for those folks that have been arrested already, are under supervision, and have either knowingly or willfully violated the conditions of their probation. Then the county parole and probation department can revoke their probation, and then there can be a sentencing structure at circuit court for these things. All of these arrests are going through circuit court, which is the county district attorney's office, not our municipal court. So a lot of moving parts, a lot of which is going to be decided by the county on how they're going to handle this. And so we're kind of in a wait and see mode as well. But we are starting to have those conversations about what we think this is going to look like. We know that as of September 1st, as the public becomes aware of this being very criminal, we'll be flooded with phone calls with people that want us to do something about some of the open air drug use or the drug use that they see being habit, or the drug possession that they see. And so we're mindful of that, and we want to be responsive, but we also want to be responsive in a way that isn't heavy-handed. And we do have a tremendous amount of discretion, and we'll continue to exercise that. So let me stop there because I see your hands up.
Commissioner Byrne.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there's any training that's being developed to possibly combat any negative discretion that could be held from officers, because when you say that officers have the discretion based on prior extenuating circumstances to arrest, I get afraid that the Black and brown community can possibly not get the same that same level of care that white citizens may get when police officers are trying to figure out if they're going to arrest or let go.
So part of what will happen is our existing stops data, which really really collects data around whether or not we are disproportionately affecting our communities of color around traffic stops, which is, self-initiated and proactive, and subject stops, which would be the two things that would lend the most bias into why you would stop somebody. Many of these arrests or many of these encounters that we would have around drugs will be subject to some of that stops data, because it would be a field contact for somebody. In other cases, it might be an actual call for service that we respond to. And so it would be, we're there because somebody else has called us and said that they've seen something, and that we go and we do basically a criminal investigation to determine whether probable cause exists to make an arrest or not. But the piece that we're really, what we really do pay attention to is the things that officers do that are self-initiated, and asking the question, why are we self-initiating these particular stops? And are we self-initiating on people that are brown and Black more often than we are people that are white, based on the population that we serve? And much of this work will kind of fall into that. Everything we do is, whether it's calls for service or vehicle stops or subject stops or any of these things, I think folds underneath kind of the ongoing dialogue and training that we have around equitable policing and bias, and being mindful of our bias. And that's an ongoing dialogue, ongoing training, year in and year out. But I think we'll capture some of this data in our stops data, especially where we have officers walking up on people and finding them with narcotics.
And is that stops data, is that available currently?
Yeah, every year we do this. This is mandated by the state, and the police department, I'm not going to have this perfect, but we're in the 99th percentile of reporting. We do a really good job of reporting, but every year the state, I think it's the Criminal Justice Commission, CJC, puts out a stops data report. And what they do is they do a full analytical review of the data that we and every other police department provides, and then they call out any causes for concern, and they do that. So yes, every year we're in a report, and you're able to kind of dig through some of the data.
And just to kind of piggyback off that a little bit too, just so you guys are aware, anytime we do a discretionary stop, it automatically populates in our computer system, and it keeps blinking at you saying you need to complete this stops data, because you have to input that data, or else it'll keep notifying you with like a big red flag of, hey, you need to do this, and it needs to be submitted ASAP. So,
Commissioner Levens?
Thank you, Chair. So Chief Skinner, I know this is a very quick change. I know you've been also preparing for it. So that Lane County Stabilization Center, that's coming in 3 to 5 years if we're lucky. I would really like to know, first question is how is EPD going to handle it on the streets now when that changes? Also, in your opinion, is this an unfunded mandate to EPD from the state? I would also like to ask about jail capacity, and is EPD going to be trying to lobby or use the union or any other connections to increase jail capacity. And that entire situation about jail, because we do not have the ability to lock up every single person that I see driving in on the way home. And then you said citations in lieu of custody. I think that is really the best way to go. Is that a judgment call by the officer, or is that defined in policy? And if it's not defined in policy, I think that's within our purview to do so. Chief,
Boy, as usual, let me see if I can pick these off. I need to write notes when you ask questions so I can make sure I hit them all for you. The stabilization center, you're right, 3 to 5 years if we're lucky. I do agree with that comment. Funding for that has been challenging, but I know that there's a commitment to do that, and we've been engaged in dialogue with regards to that. There's no unfunded mandate I can see for specifically EPD, because part of what legislators did this time is they actually built in money into this ballot measure to try and more robustly address defense, prosecution, supervision, and treatment. So that, but again, that'll be the county will be the ones that will be kind of shepherding those efforts, because the county is in the substance abuse disorder world, not the city of Eugene. And so they'll be doing that. As far as jail capacity, if arrests are made, well, an arrest is an arrest. It can be a custody arrest, or it can be an arrest with a citation in lieu of custody, both of which will go to circuit court. Circuit court is under the purview of the district attorney's office, and that pathway to jail is through the DA's office to the sheriff's office. The city of Eugene does not have, will not be in discussions about jail beds when it comes to that. The only jail bed discussion we have is the contract that we have for a very small number of jail beds that serve our municipal court. This is all going through circuit court, so this is a DA's office determination, and ultimately a judge's determination on whether jail time should or shouldn't be served in that particular case. Officer discretion is something that's existed for a long time. It shows up in a variety of different ways. It shows up on traffic stops, whether it's a warning or a citation. It shows up out on the street, whether it's an arrest or a citation in lieu of custody, or a warning. Those are first and foremost deeply rooted in probable cause. The arrest portion is deeply rooted in probable cause to be able to make an arrest, whether it's on paper or a custody arrest. What history has told me, and my experience has told me, is the lion's share of these arrests will be citations in lieu of custody, because likely if a custody arrest is made, it would just be a book and release situation at the jail anyway. And so there may be some instances where, like I said, there's some coexisting criminal behavior. Like there may be some drug possession, but we're also there because there's been an assault and we need to take somebody in custody because of the assault, and the drug arrest is just tangentially involved in that. So it's hard to, in law enforcement, it's hard to build a system that basically says, if this, then this, or you mandate that this shall. There's a very few things codified in law that says you shall do something. Interestingly enough, and shouldn't be surprising, one of those is the Abuse Prevention Act with domestic violence. The other one is, interestingly enough, and sadly, even before domestic violence was a mandatory arrest, it was animal abuse. So there's a couple of those things that are mandatory arrests, but discretion is out there in everything that we do. And so I would caution us about trying to get into a policy discussion about mandating arrest occurring. You'll never be able to account for every circumstance that an officer encounters when he or she is trying to make a good decision about arrest. And honestly, that's speaking from a long time ago that I made arrests, and you have an expert sitting in this room that makes these determinations every single day about whether, in her world, a kiddo should be arrested, cited, released to the parents. I mean, all of these things.
There's so many different other avenues, right? That even, especially for me, since I work with a lot of juveniles, there's other avenues to get them help versus going the arrest route. And And I think a good chunk of our officers actually do that on the streets with adults too. Is this something where we can get them treatment in the jail? Sometimes that does happen. But for the large majority of cases, it kind of seems like it's going to go that citation in lieu of custody route.
The other thing that I will just mention is in this world is that when we take custody of somebody, physical custody of somebody, we're also responsible for everything that that person has on their person or their belongings. And you can imagine some of the challenges we have with our unhoused population, that a custody arrest is not even practical in the sense of if they're being removed from their home, from their wherever they happen to be sleeping, and their belongings that they have. Being able to gather all of that and inventory all of that and feel responsible for all of that does not often make a lot of sense. And so that's where a citation in lieu of custody makes much more sense instead of removing them from that environment.
I appreciate that clarification. I know measure 110 and all that stuff is going to be hard and very hard on you there. So appreciate that there, Chief Skinner. And I look forward to connecting with you again about this probably next month.
Judge Lyman?
Sherry, you said earlier, and I'm not putting the chief on the spot, but if he's planning to leave after his presentation, which is fine if he has, I heard you say that.
He'll come back.
Okay, no, but I want to, Commissioner Lemons has been really patient for a number of meetings on this issue of the cameras. And he made a motion a bunch of meetings ago that got stymied right at the end of the meeting about a total ban on facial recognition. And I'm just interrupting to ask Commissioner Lemons, if you're going to raise that again, and the chief's going to be gone and we can't expect the union rep to answer that, there's no one else as I look around from the department. And so I want to ask the chief a question. If you're going to propose that, I want to ask about it. If you're not, I don't want to waste any.
I'm certainly proposing it. So
okay.
please
So my question for you is, yes, I believe a commissioner is going to propose a total, like that these cameras, the system that's the policy cannot be used at all for facial recognition. And it's maybe a really simple or stupid question, but like, suppose there was a terrorist or a bank, some really evil doer. Nobody, no question, you want to find that person. Would those, absent some policy or statutory ban of the use of those sentry camera, those Guardian trailers and stuff, if the image was still stored, like could be mined for an image that could lead to the identification of someone or no? Like,
well, I think what our commitment was on behalf of the organization, what our commitment was to make sure that we did not employ and deploy facial recognition software on our camera platform. That's what our commitment is.
So the trailers won't actively be seeking to identify.
If Department of Homeland Security calls us,
right,
and says, "Hey, I think you've got somebody that we're interested in. Do you have a recording of this thing happening?" And they file a public records request, and we give them that recording. If they put that recording through their facial recognition software for their purposes, then that's completely outside of this. But
but even for your investigative purposes, you're saying that if we made such a policy, you're agreeing you just wouldn't use them, even if it was to catch.
What I'm recognizing is in the world of facial recognition, I've not been made aware of a very robust and reliable system that I think operationally levels us up right now. At some point, if technology changes, we might come back to the table and ask the commission to revisit this. But right now, I don't see any need for facial recognition on our camera.
That's all. Okay. Because I'm certainly on the privacy thing, I'm 100% in support of it. I appreciate what you're saying. I just didn't want to deprive a tool of some extraordinary circumstance, something that would make it.
And if it's an extraordinary circumstance, then generally speaking, we won't be the agency that's really taking a lead on that. And so we'll see how that goes. Now that you brought it up, though, I would make this one statement because I got approached the other day about the term facial recognition as it pertains to the city of Eugene, public works and traffic engineering, going down the path of potentially looking at red light photo radar or photo red light enhancements at some of our intersections as a pilot project. They very, I'll use the term loosely because it means something different in our world. They very loosely talked about it being facial recognition. It's a completely different definition in our world. Yes, the facial recognition you're talking about is getting a photo taken of you after being with a bright flash with your mouth wide open, shocked that you just got caught. It's not a putting it through a database to try and identify who the person is. It's just a picture of somebody with the vehicle license plate to the presumptive registered owner so that they can see if those things matched up when you receive the citation. So I'm asking them to find a different way to communicate other than using the term facial recognition, because that's where people's minds go. And that's not our thing. So.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't mean to
I appreciate
shuffle
it.
us around.
Thank you for doing that.
I appreciate the clarification on both of those matters, Chief. Chief, are you done with your report? Because I
Yeah,
wanted,
I'm done.
okay,
Thank you.
except that you're not, because I'm going to ask you another one.
Okay.
So in the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting, one recommendation was made by Commissioner Booker, and I think it carries quite a lot of merit, and I wanted to get your input on it. And that would be having a representative from Police Commission participating in your ad hoc special teams acting on capacity assignments. So I know it coming up, we will be reviewing policy 1015, not this evening, but it will come up. But we previewed it a little bit in the LAMHW, which is much easier to say, meeting. And Commissioner Booker had brought up the possibility of the commission being invited to participate in those selections.
Yeah, we are open. We are constantly open and looking for people to round out our selection processes in a variety of different ways. A really great example for those of you that have been around for a while is like Amanda McCluskey, who was a part of this commission as the human rights liaison. If I have my history correct, I mean, Sean will be able to correct me. But she still sits on our hiring boards for new police officers, and she does a fantastic job. So that's I guess the medium to long answer is yes, we're open to rounding out our selections in a variety of different ways, up to and including members of this commission if they're available and want to do that.
Thank you. Commissioner Booker, does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Chair. I would love to, if I have the chance or opportunity, I'll let it be a part of that process.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. All right, so now we will move into the annual report progress. The reason why this is coming up on the agenda this evening is because Holly and I are meeting with the mayor and with the city manager next week and have somewhat of an obligation to present to them the work that's been achieved so far and what we hope to accomplish in the remaining year of our work plan. I did ask the chief to go through our work plan that's in your packet this evening to go through some of the more heavily weighted items with us and give us some perspective from the chief's viewpoint as far as possible areas where we can be most effective or areas where we may be reliant on waiting for legislature from the state or other circumstances outside of the police commission's control. So, Chief, I know we talked a little bit about virtual policing, the overview of the new software program. Honestly, it sounds like it's a hit with the community.
Yeah.
My PD Connect.
And Chair, I in the interest of wanting to get through this with you, is if it's okay, can I just go down the list and offer some thoughts? And I'm sure that will generate some questions and be able to do that. Number one on the list was virtual policing. And to your point, Chair Hawkins, you mentioned that came up on the heels of us discussing how we were moving to a much more robust and equitable online reporting system that had a virtual option to connect with law enforcement and CSOs that we called virtual policing. We're about 10 months into that. We're getting great feedback. We've gotten great feedback from our community members on how to improve that. We've made a few minor tweaks to that, but we're starting to see more and more people leveraging that. We have a kiosk right outside this door that's ready to go live very soon. And I have public safety payroll tax money to stand up 2 or 3 more kiosks in the community for those people that maybe, and this is, I think, on a recommendation of Commissioner Lemons was talking about people maybe with disabilities or don't have the right electronics to be able to file the report. We're going to put some kiosks up in some key locations so that people can access that. So that is in place. And so when you think about really, is there any policy work to be done around that? It's hard to see a clear path for policy work there. Number 2 is mutual aid. Again, mutual aid was a discussion that came up very robustly on the heels of some of our protests and riots that we had. It was largely centered around the city of Springfield coming into town and not being held accountable for their behavior. And so there was this thought of revamping the mutual aid policy. And I would just point out that mutual aid shows up in a variety of different ways, not just managing protests and riots. On any really bad day where we need help from our neighboring agencies, we have to have a system that allows for them to be able to come in and help us out. And so mutual aid is one of those things that I'm going to be sensitive to, because what we have seen historically is this happening up in Portland around the same time, where the mutual aid policy was taken to a place that de-incentivized anybody from around Portland from coming in and helping them because of the tremendous liability that it presented for those other departments. So they refused to come, and Portland was stuck on an island. Portland, that metro area, has lots of resources. They have lots of people around them. Us down here, if we have, for instance, God forbid, an active shooter or an active threat at one of our schools, and we need people to come, then we need people to come and not second guess whether or not they should or should not come. And so mutual aid is one of those things that's deeply rooted in operational efficiency and effectiveness. I'm not going to speak about downtown safety. All I would say is when I see the word staffing, I get nervous, because staffing is very much an operational thing, and staffing is oftentimes deeply rooted in conversations with Eugene Police Employees Association around minimum staffing and how to adequately staff, because it speaks to safety. And so I would suggest that the police commission take that into consideration before taking that one on. The discipline matrix is what I would do is point you to, and I do not have this in your packet, but we can provide this for you. House Bill 2930, which in 2021 established the law enforcement standards of conduct and discipline. That is in legislation now, and it actually has a discipline matrix attached to it that we utilize already for kind of a starting point on what a presumptive level of discipline would be if we see the behavior occurring as the matrix articulates. Certainly a matrix can't be robust enough to catch everything, but it's got the ones on there that you would expect to be on there. So there is a matrix already in place that we're leveraging for at least a starting point on discipline. So that's House Bill 2930, and being able to do that. I'm not going to speak on recruitment, retention, the ad hoc policy police committee, communication with all of these seem viable. I'll go to number 9. That's the other one that kind of jumps out at me. Eugene police officers are strike prohibited by state law. So there will no be, we're already not able to strike. But anytime we talk about labor disputes, we have the Employee Relation Board, which we call ERB, and Bureau of Labor and Industries, BOLI, that governs an awful lot of the labor disputes that we would have internally, as well as grievance processes and those types of things. And so I would suggest that maybe we be a little bit careful about feeling like we have the ability to affect any change there, because that's happening. The one thing that I do think, well, amongst us, a few of these others, the emergent technology, I think, is squarely within the purview of the police commission. As we think about new technologies and as we think about how we want to leverage new technologies, it's helpful for me to know, as I look at that operationally, it's helpful for me to know and get some input on how maybe that can be perceived by the various communities that you represent, and how that kind of shows up and reveal some of those blind spots as we build policy around that. I do think there's some things that make a lot of sense with regards to
Let me stop you with our top 10. We have a question from Commissioner Lemons.
Sure.
Sorry,
Okay.
please let the
There you are.
I was just raising my hand for a couple different questions, but please let him finish. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm not going to go. I'm going to very quickly go through the rest of some of these things. Some of the stuff you're already trying to do. The one that jumps out on the second tier, which is 11 to 19. Obviously, internal EPD budget review, that is definitely within the purview of the city department finances, and that is a council action around budget and budget committee work that's gonna be done. Certainly, the police commission from time to time has had some strong feelings about where, and we heard it earlier, where there might be some suggestions around where council should pay attention, or the budget committee should pay attention about where we invest our money. But as far as making decisions around how we spend our money, that's certainly at the council level and budget committee level. And then I'll jump down to 16. Qualified immunity was a lot of discussion around 2020 and 2021, certainly discussed a ton in the long session in 2021. And qualified immunity is not a local thing, that is a state and federal thing. And so that generally gets addressed with a change in legislation, not a local policy change when it comes to qualified immunity. I think outside of that, those are my high level looks at this work plan, so that you can get a sense of maybe where you can really pick some of these things off and feel like you're making a lot of progress.
Thank you, Chief. Commissioner Lemons?
Thank you. So just a couple things on the mutual aid policy. I know it shows up in a variety of ways, but specifically when it comes to policing and the EPD, so when Springfield comes in and helps you out, why are they not subject to the same policy standards that EPD is subject to, since they're working within your jurisdiction?
Well, that's probably a really, really complex and very deeply rooted legally. I mean, they cannot be held to policies that they don't know exist. That's part of when we discipline people for violating policy. The presumption is that the employee understood that the policy was in place and chose to violate it either through negligence or through intention. Having an outside jurisdiction fully understand the nuances of all of our policies that govern us is probably not realistic. So, and understand that when we're talking about mutual aid, it would, under the best set of circumstances, they would come in and kind of be under our, for lack of a better term, Commissioner Levins, our supervision, that we would direct their activities. We had a moment in time with the riots down specifically at 7th and Washington, where that got away from us a little bit. And I think people were concerned with what they saw coming from Springfield. But Springfield is never going to be held to our standards. They're not going to be held. The auditor's office is never going to have authority over Springfield. The best we can hope for is we can, if something were to happen that we felt like was egregious, that we would make that complaint to the Springfield leadership, and that they would look at it and they would weigh that against their policies and not necessarily measure that against our policies.
So in the event of, what you just brought up, who takes the liability? Is that the city of Eugene for inviting Springfield in, or, where does that go?
Yeah, there's oftentimes we see a bit of shared liability there. The city of Springfield knows that they're still on the hook for their officers' behavior. And then there'll be some vicarious liability, likely by the city who invited them in the event that something goes badly. Unfortunately, from time to time, it is kind of the option that stinks the least when you think about choosing not to have anybody come versus having them come. Also creates a tremendous amount of liability for us from a safety perspective. So it really is a judgment call at the time on whether or not we ask them to come. A really good example of mutual aid is if we were tied up on a massive, really critical incident that had all of our resources, and we needed somebody to come and just handle our priority one calls for service in the event that somebody calls 911 and is in dire need of police response, they could come into our jurisdiction and respond to those types of things for us while we handled our critical incident. So that's where we see that the most. Or if we had an active threat or an active shooter that would occur, then the mutual aid policy allows for Springfield, Lane County, Oregon State Police to come into our jurisdiction and respond. And then we would, as they arrive, we would do our very best to direct those resources.
Great, thank you. And I'm actually going to go out of order because you brought it, or I brought up liability, and we had a good discussion about that. But I would encourage the commission to forward a proposal to start that legislative process to get rid of qualified immunity, as Chief Skinner just recommended. And then when it comes to downtown safety, I heard from a few people that there's going to be a cleanup team for downtown housed within EPD. Is that correct? If so, can you give us some details? And if that also is the case, why didn't the city put out a request for proposals for more cheaper options, especially considering our budget shortfall?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to answer your question about the request for proposal for that. What I would tell you is that in this budget, we have some limited duration positions that are going to help with cleanup in the downtown core so that we can stay really, really clear on what our mission was downtown, which is clean, safe, and activated. We're working on the safe, we're working on the activated, and from time to time, the cleanliness is something that we need to be a little bit more responsive. Up until now, we've just shared resources with Public Works maintenance and the right-of-way team. And so this has just carved out a couple of limited duration positions that are going to focus on the downtown core. But the mechanics of how we selected those folks or did a request for a proposal, that was not out of the police department.
Great. Thank you, Chief.
There's a couple more hands up, but Commissioner Lemons, could I have you clarify your question, please? We were regarding the qualified immunity. Can you please clarify your request to the police commission?
Yeah. So, you know, it was very high up on our work plan, and Chief Skinner said that it was a legislative thing. So we would have to have our legislators come down, and that's the way a policy would be made. But we are a recommending policy, you know, body, and I think this might be a good starting point for that movement. And I'm sure that would take a long time. But that's all I was saying, is like it might be something for us to consider, just to put together a recommendation that qualified immunity is eliminated within our city, and we can start from there and start the legislative process as Chief Skinner suggested.
Where would we make that recommendation to, since we can only recommend to city council?
I think that's perfect. That's perfect. A recommendation to city council that is on the public record, and then we can forward that on to legislators.
Can I make a suggestion, Chair?
Yes.
I think if you're wanting to go down that path, I think it would be I could, if I could make a recommendation to ask Holly along with Chair Hawkins to identify somebody to come in and give you a really good training on what qualified immunity is for police officers. I think that's where we need to start, is understanding what qualified immunity is first. I think we've kind of lost. I think it's just important before we try to change something that we really understand that. You can imagine as a leader, as a police leader, and we've talked about the challenge with recruiting and hiring people. The thought of stripping qualified immunity from police officers essentially would mean I would not be able to hire police officers, because there are provisions in there that allow for good faith activity that ends up bad to still allow for some immunity for police officers. So I'm just suggesting maybe a really good understanding of what qualified immunity means in our world before we go down the path of making a suggestion to council.
Thank you for that recommendation, Chief. Commissioner Booker?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the mutual aid, I have two things. One with the mutual aid and then the qualified immunity. I didn't hear Chief saying what's in place to hold officers accountable for their behavior, if anything. learning from the riots that took place before. And if nothing is in place for accountability, is there a way to put that into policy to add that to the current policy if it's not already in there? And is there some training being conducted, you know, how to conduct yourself when helping your neighbor type of thing, that was conducted after seeing what happened when mutual aid was used before?
So one of the benefits of the timing of so much of our civil disorder, protests, disturbances, riots, was the fact that the long session in 2021, what came out of that was as many as 23 different police reforms, all of which the Eugene Police Department and what I'll say is Julie is on this call for you guys. In the event that you, especially when we talk about the camera policy, we'll get her engaged. But Julie spent an exhaustive amount of time making sure that our policies were in alignment with the legislative adjustments. And some of that were training issues. Some of those were uniform issues. I mean, even little things like you'll see officers when doing crowd control or disturbance control actually have their DPSST numbers on their uniforms now as a result of some legislation to be able to define who the officer is. So it's a much more complex answer to say that yes, we learned a lot. Yes, we implemented a lot of policy during that time. We learned a lot about having Springfield in and how if we could do it all over again, how we can create a better command and control system where we had our people supervising their people and helping them understand. The thing that I would say is that we have a more formal, a specifically formal group that is called the MRT team that is deeply rooted in industry standard practices that we should see across the state on how we manage crowds. And so we cross-train with other jurisdictions. So we're becoming more in alignment together than we ever were before. That the stuff that happened in 2020 took all of us by surprise, and we got caught flat-footed, and we've learned a ton since then. And there's been a ton of training since then on how we do this. And so I like where we're at in Eugene. I think we do it better than most. But I'm also more confident today than I was after I saw what happened in 2020 about our mutual aid partners being in alignment with kind of the industry standard practices of managing large crowds like that.
And I think what I've also learned from mutual aid from other agencies is within the state, there's the state standard of how officers operate. So if I were to go up to Portland, technically I could make an arrest there, right? Because my powers go kind of all over the state of Oregon. So everybody has this kind of industry standard that the chief was just talking about. But I really think our robust system, and I'm not trying to just brag because I am a little bit biased towards EPD, but I do think we have a robust system here to make sure that we're holding our folks accountable. I wish other agencies could maybe use us as a model, and I'm sure some are nationally, actually. I know that they are. But at this time, we have the stuff in place for our EPD folks. And yes, I absolutely wish that other agencies did as well.
A really good example of this, Commissioner Booker, is prior to 2020, when we were managing riots, so much of what informed us on what we did well, what we didn't do so well, was as a result of what we captured in body cameras. And other agencies didn't have body cameras. And part of the legislation in 2021 is to mandate body cameras for certain agencies that are serving a population, or maybe it's a sworn, I don't know exactly if it's 30,000, sticks in my mind, populations over 30,000 have to have body cameras. So that's another example of how legislation has created an environment where we can hold each other more accountable because we actually have the information if we need it. EPD's been doing that for years, but I believe on that day, we were probably the only body camera wearing entity that was managing protests in May of 2020.
We've got the chief for about 5 more minutes, and we've got questions from Commissioner Shivers and Judge Lehman and Commissioner Lemons. So, Commissioner Shivers?
I wasn't done, Chair.
Okay, can we keep it brief?
Yeah, the other one was about qualified immunity. And I'm glad, Chief, that you brought it to our attention that we need to have somebody to come and explain it. and go into detail about it. What I would like to hope to see with that particular discussion is the ways in which qualified immunity has worked in favor of the officers when it shouldn't have. We've seen nationally incidents that have happened from Breonna Taylor, etc., where qualified immunity was used and these officers got off pretty much with murder. So I would like to see both sides of the coin when we do have that presentation on not only how it benefits the officers, but how officers misuse qualified immunity as well when they should be held accountable.
I think that's completely fair.
Thank you. Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, I'm really, so yes, I would like to second the idea that we need a robust discussion and examination of what qualified immunity is. Because, you know, every day my brother breaks open people's doors and kidnaps them. He works on an ambulance and he is protected by qualified immunity. The discussion of what needs to be done is incredibly specific, and our ability to make recommendations it can only be, hey, you should look at this. Hey, you should make a very specific change, which we don't have the context or ability to ascertain. I think it's a waste of time for us to dig into the weeds there when we have policies at the ground level that need to be tinkered with. I think we all in our private time absolutely should be involved with our legislators as they work on those specific issues. But all we need to do is understand what qualified immunity is and what it isn't.
Commissioner Shivers, that did not go where I thought that was going with that story about your brother. Judge Lyman?
Thank you. Chief just had to step out for a minute, but I want to remind us that the mutual aid, one of the things was it was Dove Medical and Springfield showed up in SWAT, full gear, tactical gear, and we weren't. And the issue was like, I think the basic simple thing is, and I'd ask him if he was still here, you know, did you talk to Springfield after that? And can we decide, like, you're going to respond, you know, can we make suggestions that you don't show up and escalate for us? So I think that there was that piece. And then when we did our work plan, I unfortunately missed the retreat. I tried to elevate qualified immunity, and Commissioner Shivers said exactly what he said just now, and I still disagree completely. Like, this is a huge issue in policing. This is Eugene, Oregon. This is a progressive community that has an independent police auditor, that has a civilian review board, that has this police commission. If we can't have an informed consideration of this pressing national issue of policing, and it is threatening to the police, and I don't want to like tell the chief I'm out to eliminate. I mean, sure, there probably is a place for some immunity. I think he made a great suggestion that we do get a training and learn about it and then discuss among ourselves, is there something? But we could put something on the table and it could be impactful and it could make a difference in a national sense. And so I really am strenuously pushing back at this idea that it's outside of our purview to take on something that is so huge in policing. So
well said. Well said.
Thank you, Judge Lemon. Commissioner Lemons?
Yeah, thank you. Quite honestly, Judge Lehman, you took care of it all. Commissioner Shivers, I'll follow up later on a couple things that I might disagree about with, and just because of the sake of time and agenda, and obviously Chief Skinner is not in the room as well. So I'm just hoping that Chief Skinner can put in his next report what specific lessons were learned from 2020, because he said many were learned, especially considering the ad hoc commission's input, because I do not see a lot of those recommendations in policy, and I am certainly not seeing them being discussed anymore.
Thank you.
If you want to report back on that, I think we probably might want to check in with the auditor's office as well, because they have incorporated a lot of those recommendations in their work. It wasn't just for the police, it kind of spread out, and to get a more full picture. I think it's actually probably, I can check with the city manager and get, you guys have a fancy spreadsheet that shows all the progress, so we can get that for folks.
Wonderful. Thank you, Councilor Yang. Since the chief has departed, and before we start our conversation regarding the Guardian trailers, I wanted to follow Dr. Booker's lead. He mentioned in the Law Enforcement Mental Health and Wellness Subcommittee meeting that we spend a lot of time focusing on perhaps officers who don't necessarily have a strong following of the policies that we establish, but how do we reward or incentivize or even acknowledge the good officers? And so with that in mind, in our meeting packet is the Eugene Police Department commendations for February of 24. Holly, do these come out every month?
They do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would there be one for March as well?
Yes.
Okay.
If there's accommodations that are submitted. But yes,
Okay.
theoretically, yes.
All right. And it's also, I was also informed that the chief actually reads out these commendations as well at staff meetings. A citizen sent a letter to express their gratitude for the service that a community service officer provided to the citizen over the span of a couple of weeks as the citizen attempted to locate their son that suffers from mental illness. The citizen commented, during the paranoid schizophrenic behavior on the part of my son, the officer was kind, communicative, informative, sympathetic, and generous with his time via phone and text. He is just the kind of officer you want on your staff, one who understands mental illness and is supportive of distraught parents. I cannot praise him enough. Officers were commended by a citizen for their response in addressing illegal drug activity that had been taking place in front of the citizen's business. The officers were able to take care of the issue and remove the offenders, allowing access to the business once again. The citizen commented, "We're just so appreciative for them doing that. It just means a lot to me." Officers received high praise from a citizen for their professionalism and response related to a prowler call for service that the citizen had reported. Thankfully, everything turned out to be all right and everyone involved was safe. The citizen commented, "Wow, I am so grateful. I was totally at ease and feel safe because they found out exactly what was happening." A citizen commended an officer for their assistance recently at Eugene Airport. The citizen arrived at the airport, was feeling under the weather, and felt that it probably wasn't a good idea to travel. When the citizen notified TSA of what they were experiencing, TSA was able to contact the officer to assist. The officer ensured that the citizen received EMT's assistance, helped coordinate the change in the citizen and their spouse's travel arrangements, and even helped with securing lodging for the evening. The citizen commented, "It was a really positive experience." An officer was complimented by a citizen for their care and inspiration during the recent ice storm event in the local area. The citizen is a neighbor of the officer, and when the citizen had left their home on foot to get supplies, they were unable to make it back due to weather conditions. The citizen became distraught in that moment. The officer located the citizen and assisted in transporting the supplies back to the citizen's home. The citizen commented, "I'm not sure I would have made it. He was professional, he was helpful, he was very kind. I'm giving him 5 stars." Like DoorDash, I guess. A citizen commended a community service officer for the exemplary training that was given to the citizen's workplace recently. The citizen commented, "We thoroughly enjoyed all of the information you shared here in the therapy department. We were talking about all of your strategies beyond the meeting, which is a definite sign that you made an impact. It's obvious you love what you do, which makes us love listening to everything you have to say. Just wanted you to know that we appreciate your time and everything you do for our community." A traffic safety officer received accolades from a citizen for the positive interaction that the citizen witnessed at the conclusion of a traffic stop. The citizen commented, "One of your motor patrol officers had a vehicle pulled over in front of my house today. He was very professional with the driver, but what I was impressed with was that when the stop was over, he noticed my neighbor and their young kids working together in the yard and took the time to stop and talk with them. It made me smile watching the officer park his motorcycle and let these kids climb up and sit on a patrol bike and interact with an officer in an extremely positive and memorable way. This is the way that community interact. This is the type of community interaction that is desperately needed in these times. That interaction will be with those young minds forever and hopefully help this divide between community and police that seems to be present these days." Good job, APD. Officers were commended by a citizen for their professionalism and compassion during their response to a vehicle pedestrian accident recently. This was a traumatic incident for those that were involved. The officers were able to be as gentle as possible with the involved parties during the fragile situation. The citizen commented, "What stood out for me was the follow-up call I had with one of the survivors. The gentleman was concerned that his vehicle, which was also his home, was impounded. It was no longer running as the front was severely damaged. EPD put him and his partner in a hotel for 2 nights." Citizens commended officers for their excellence in patrolling the downtown corridor. Security from several downtown establishments stated that the officers have been outstanding. A citizen commented, "They have been extremely proactive and responsive to the needs of the area during peak hours. These officers frequently stage their cars with lights illuminated and get out on foot to interact with bar patrons and prevent problems. They are polite and professional with patrons and staff alike." Department employees were commended by a citizen for their effort in saving the life of the citizen's coworker. The citizen commented, "The rapid response and skill of these workers saved a life. It brings great comfort to know the quality and quantity of emergency response that is available for our employees and community. These workers are true heroes, making a difference every day. While he has continued healing ahead, we are beyond thankful to those heroes who made the difference." A detective was commended by a citizen for their exceptional support and police service related to the investigation of numerous incidents of vandalism at a local place of worship. The citizen commented, "The detective's thorough attention to our cases, his availability for contact, willingness to put in extra work, his openness in communication and discussions and investigative updates have all been exemplary. The experience for the community of being victimized was mitigated significantly by the reassuring dedication and outstanding police work demonstrated by the Eugene Police Detective." Commissioner Lemons?
Thank you, Chair. And as this is all part of the public record already, I'm not going to make too many comments outside of praising the EPD officer for understanding that mental health and being communicative, especially dealing with someone with schizophrenia. That is really hard. I also wish that a commendation was not necessary for this, and this was like a bare minimum standard for EPD. But a big shout out to that officer. I do not want to take any part of that commendation away. So a big shout out to that officer. And going forward, since this is already part of the public record, I would recommend if we're going to read all of the commendations, and then we should also read all of the complaints and civilian stuff in that comes with our packets as well. And I know that did not come this time.
Thank you for that recommendation. Any other questions before we move to policy review? All right, we will move to policy 1210, public safety cameras. Sergeant Barong is joining us virtually this evening, so she's available for questions as we go through the policy while we await the chief's return. Commissioner Lemons, I know you are teed up and ready to go for this one, and you have been for a few months. So as Judge Lyman mentioned, thank you for your patience. Do you want to carry it away for us?
Oh, me?
Yes, sorry, Commissioner Lemons.
Oh, okay. Sure. I thought we were going to have a presentation on the updates to the policy, but if that is not the case, Sergeant
Barong, are you able to present those updates to us? We have some highlights in what was provided in our meeting packet, but I think you have the most insight in it.
Yeah, I'll have to apologize because it's been a couple months since we last discussed this, and I'm also joining you from Florida. So in looking through the policy, we had implemented, I'm just going to kind of, as some of the concerns that were brought up, we did implement the statement about let's start with signage. We decided to take that operationally and handle the signage in Kesey Square. The downtown team and Lieutenant is working on making sure that that is posted. There was a discussion about eye level. We could probably discuss it more about what exactly eye level is, but I'm going to let them handle that operationally. And then let's see, we inserted a statement about the EPD public safety cameras will not be used in conjunction with any facial recognition software. We added that into 1210.6 letter C. There was a discussion about inserting the word rolling in 1210.7, which I did add the word, 2 words rolling data into that section. And let's see, I think those were the latest concerns and adjustments to the revisions that were made.
Commissioner Lemons.
Thank you, Chair. So, and thank you, Julie, for being here. On policy 1210.6, you decided not to make a change in there, or at least from the revision that was sent out in the meeting packet. So you said that Kesey Square is going to get some signage. Eye level is, it's subjective. I would just recommend that y'all go with whatever you expect pedestrians to see when you're walking down the street. I think you can just hop with code enforcement to figure that out super quickly at what like eye level should be, because people with disabilities fully understand where like society considers eye level. On 1210.7, I still have a big problem with the 30 days. I do appreciate the working addition, but was a financial study or an inquiry done to see how much it would cost to increase that to a 90-day, 1 year, or where I would like to go is a 7-year, because that's the statute of limitations for most cases. These cameras with the 30-day give more power to EPD and to the prosecutors, because they're the first people. Honestly, a defendant is not even going to know that a camera exists until you delete their data. So we know the government rules slow, and that also is going to hurt the defendants, which are not yet guilty, by the way. And then the chief brought up an interesting, and Judge Lehman as well, that conversation about the public records request for federal investigations related to facial recognition. If we're only keeping it for 30 days, then how are the feds going to be able to come in and investigate? Let's say a terrorism thing happened 45 days ago. Would that data be deleted? So there might be some positives to law enforcement as well in this policy, and not just to making sure that our, as citizens, our rights are protected.
Commissioner Lemons, we've been rejoined by the chief. Will you back up just a little bit and restate your question regarding the financial study?
Yes. So regarding the 30-day retention period, was there any inquiry or study done in to see how much it would cost for a 90-day, 1 year, or 7-year period, which I think is the most important, because that's the statute of limitations for most crimes?
Not to my knowledge. I just know it'll cost more money. So, we talked a little bit earlier about kind of unfunded mandates, and I'm always sensitive in this budget time to be mindful of that. But I've not done a specific like gone out for request for proposal for, let's say, cloud for this to be stored in the cloud somewhere based on what we think the data would take. So no.
Certainly disappointed by that, but thank you. And I don't see any other hands up. So I still want to make that motion as Judge Lehman was talking about. And honestly, I just want to be on the right side of history. So just to put things into perspective, sorry, that's my dog and she's tripping. We, be quiet, please. Anyways, so
You can't hear your dog. It's okay. All we know is that you just said your
good. Well,
dog's tripping.
she's the only one in my head then. Okay, good. So yeah, I certainly still want to make the motion, but clarify it and explain it a bit more. So we are an advisory board and Chief Skinner has the ultimate say, the future chief, and the future chief will have the ultimate say. So I would like to add the addition of optical. So that would pertain to body cameras and to the Guardian trailers, as well as to the Overwatch cameras, that they will not be used in a facial recognition technology. So that does not fully encompass within this one. But the overall motion, and I felt a lot of pushback over the last couple months because I know it's going to affect several policies, is that we will not, EPD will not use optical surveillance equipment for facial recognition purposes. And that leaves the door open to allow EPD to still do online, investigating sex trafficking, sex crimes. But we are the state that and the city, like we are a leader, and I would love for EPD to and Eugene to be the first one that comes out with a policy saying we will not use this. And I don't want us to, or EPD or the city, to be a stepping stone towards more similar dictatorship tactics, which are coming up. So that was a very wordy motion. I should probably clarify that a little bit. So no optical surveillance equipment will be utilized by Eugene Police Department regarding facial recognition technology.
Judge Wyman?
Commissioner Lemons, I do applaud the desire and effort to get this really important issue and discussed, and it's appropriate to discuss. My issue with the motion that you just made is that we're looking at a specific policy. And in that policy, because of your persistence, we've added, and I support the addition in this policy of the prohibition of these public safety cameras being used for facial recognition. And without any opposition to what you're proposing, I just think that we need to, if it's broader, if it's a broad prohibition on the use of a technology, then in the same way, like with qualified immunity, I just feel I need to be more informed. And I did ask the question that I asked the chief tonight because I wanted to have at least that information so I could support the change in this policy. And so I do support it in this policy, and I'm very interested in hearing more about it. I'm just not prepared to second or I wouldn't support that. The only other thing I want to say really briefly is this is a process thing, but this happens. And Sergeant Perron, this is not in any way a criticism. It's just a request for the future. When we do these policies and we don't visit one for 3 months and then it comes with changes, but they're not redlined, they're not marked to show the change, it's very difficult to keep it in context. And so I'm just making a request that we try to show from one meeting to the next the reflection of the revisions. So, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I think those do come out with the electronic version. I see the comments in the PDF when I view it on my computer screen, but to your point, it's not reflected on the printout that we reviewed during the meeting. So I appreciate that feedback. Commissioner Mogart?
Yeah, I second the motion.
And that was Commissioner Lemons' motion for
Correct.
No optical surveillance will be used by EPD. No optical surveillance software will be used by EPD for facial recognition purposes.
Correct.
Councilor Ye.
Yeah, I appreciate that you asked a question earlier in case the chief wasn't here, so thank you so much again. I also like to make sure I understand things, which is why I kind of pushed back the first time this came out, because I didn't feel like I had a good grasp. And I think the question earlier helped a little bit, but I just want to make sure, because now we have the exact wording of the motion. From your perspective, do you have any concerns about this now that we have a specific motion that you want us to know?
Counselor, yeah, it's going to be a two-part answer.
Okay.
I don't have any high level of concerns with what I believe Commissioner Lemons is trying to accomplish.
Mhm.
I think in our world, because we live in our world, I think saying that the term optical surveillance is way too broad. Because optical surveillance happens in a lot of different areas. I mean, does that mean optics or binoculars, their scope? I mean, we do a lot of optical surveillance. So what I would suggest is maybe I work with Julie and see if we can come up with a suggestion to get Commissioner Lemons where he's trying to get that's more industry specific. To be able to do this. So I get, so we're talking about cameras, we're talking about body cameras, we're talking about Guardian trailers, we're talking about the Overwatch cameras or the camera system that's in the downtown core. I think there's a way to get to yes on this. I just am not sure. I think it'll be really confusing if we stick with optical surveillance, because that means a lot of different things.
And maybe Commissioner Lemons can verify. I thought what he meant is more like software, like a drone, like someone that's actively watching a drone. That wouldn't count, or binoculars wouldn't count. Is that right?
What I would suggest is it doesn't matter, honestly, you guys, if it's optical surveillance or anything. If we just make a prohibition on EPD leveraging any facial recognition software on any technology platform, then we're there. And we don't have to call out cameras and we don't have to call out optical surveillance. If we're making a commitment to not use facial recognition until such time I feel comfortable with the technology, we're gonna have the same conversation about AI, by the way, here pretty soon, about where we use AI and where we don't. But if we just make a prohibition in EPD to not leverage facial recognition software, period, then it applies to everything. And we don't have to call out cameras and optical, those types of things.
Are you okay with that?
I based on what I know today, Commissioner Lyman, and not being comfortable with facial recognition technology and the way it's leveraged in my industry, I am okay with that today. And if such time comes up that there's some breakthrough and some much more robust reliability, then we'll come back to the table and have a conversation.
Councilor Zelenka.
Yeah, I was going to say something along the lines of what the chief just said. Was the proposed motion is so broad, I just don't know what it means, and I don't know its full implications because we haven't really had much conversation about it. Councilor or Commissioner Lemons, I think simpler is better here, and I was going to suggest something along the lines of what the chief said. So if you accept a friendly amendment that says EPD will not use facial recognition software, period. I think that's what you're trying to do.
Yes. I will absolutely accept that friendly motion. I think I made that 2 months ago. So let's do it. Yeah.
All right. Is there a second to the motion with the friendly amendment?
I'll second that.
Well, just for a comment, interesting nuance to this, though.
Oh, he has to accept
it. Well, just before you guys do this, because what you're about ready to do is you're about ready to plop this in the camera policy, and that's not necessarily the place for it.
No.
We need to find a good place for that because now it's going to be a much broader. So I don't know if Julie has an idea of maybe where this better fits that would cover the entirety of what we do in EPD, but I don't want to just plop this in the camera policy because then the assumption will be that it's tied to the camera.
Good point.
So maybe should we make a decision about the camera policy and then do this after?
Well, so we
Yeah.
have
Well, the
motion,
motion's.
The motion's on the table.
Not on, it's
Oh,
not
yeah.
about the policy. The motion is the motion.
We're just doing it in the middle. That's fine.
guys, you know Robert's rules gets me every time. Okay, so the motion on the table is are we going to be working on a policy that says somewhere, or working on putting it into policies and all over the place, saying that EPD will not use facial recognition software?
No,
We have an emergent technologies policy, don't we?
We have the emergent technologies on our work plan. Is there a specific policy about it, though?
Probably bring back the appropriate place. I'm not having. Not you,
Yeah.
Julie.
I might suggest that, clarifying my friendly amendment, that it just be really simple, that EPD not use safe facial recognition software, and then I'd say comment, and have staff bring back the appropriate place to place that policy. Does that work for you, Scott?
absolutely.
Because I agree, it doesn't belong in the camera policy.
Okay, so if I am understanding correctly, we have a motion about that particular statement, and that is separate from a motion to approve this policy as written.
Correct.
Okay. So let's go ahead then and vote on the motion on the table that we are going to insert EPD will not use facial recognition software in policy that is brought to us by Sergeant Barong. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Or did we not
Jen,
discuss it?
could you clarify? Could you clarify the motion again?
I would love to if I understood it better myself.
I made it.
Thank you.
EPD will not use facial recognition software, and staff will bring back the appropriate place to put it in policy.
We recommend. We don't get to do that ourselves. Modeling.
Yeah, we recommend.
Okay, will you please restate one more time, Councilor?
We recommend that the EPD not use facial recognition software, and staff will bring back to the commission the appropriate place to put it in policy. That work?
Okay. So that's the motion on the table, or is it that is that the amendment to Scott's motion?
No, it's a friendly.
You took it as a friendly.
Okay, and Judge Lyman?
Yeah, I just want to say to Commissioner Lemons, like, the persistence pays off. I want to thank the chief, because honestly, I just didn't want to create a problem. But I commend you for being persistent, and I'm really appreciative of the attitude of the department. It makes it really easy to support this. So thank you.
Sergeant Smith? Barong, sorry.
That's okay. I just want to ensure and clarify that we are keeping the statement in this public safety camera about no facial recognition software as is. And then I will come back to the table with another place to insert a broader statement that would cover multiple policies on no facial recognition. Just clarifying.
If this passes.
That is my understanding, as long as we pass this particular motion. Commissioner Lemons?
So yeah, so that's the motion on the table, but I still have another motion to make on the specific camera policy as well.
Okay, let's deal with the motion on the table right now. Now can we consider it discussed? Okay, so all in favor of the motion stating that we recommend EPD will not use facial recognition software, and we will allow city staff to bring back to us the place to put that, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please say nay. And any abstentions? Hearing none, I think we officially passed a motion. All right, Commissioner Lemons, back to the policy.
Yeah, thank you. So I would like to make a motion that EPD actually does that fiscal study to and bring back to us how much more it would cost to retain more data for all the reasons that I stated earlier.
Can I ask a clarifying question? So I'm happy to take a look and get quotes for that. Is it the commission's opinion that there's some an agreeable amount of money that you think we should be spending on this? And is there like a threshold that's going to be too expensive for you? Because the 30-day policy is what's in the state retention policy, state's retention policy and recommendations now that the city generally adheres to across all of the platforms of public records. So I guess, Commissioner Lemons, is there a sense that, let's just say, if it's a year and the year is only going to cost us an extra $5,000 a year versus $50,000 a year, that $5,000 is agreeable. You think $5,000 agreeable, but $50,000 is too expensive. I'm trying to get some clarity around what it is. What if I do this work? If I do this work, what's going to end up feeling good or not feeling good based on a dollar amount?
Quite honestly, I was asking you to do that work because I was hoping you had already done that work. It's not the police commission's role to say what your budget is or anything along those lines. I just want to know, and I think fellow commissioners hopefully want to know, like, is it a 20%? Like, how much of a strain on EPD would it be to make it a little bit more fair and keep this 30-day thing, and expand that?
I don't mind you making a recommendation on how to direct my work. I am going to be sensitive to the staff hours that it takes to be able to do that work. So part of why that hasn't been commissioned is because it's not nearly as simple as just making a couple of phone calls. We actually have to go through some procurement. It stands up many different people within the organization to get those bids. And so let me do this. Let me meet you halfway. Let me get a sense of maybe whether or not we have some other areas of storage that we're already employing or using that we think would be commensurate with what you're asking. And I will get those general costs of what we're already paying for, as opposed to standing up an entire request for proposal around storage specifically for this platform, and asking staff to do all that work, just to especially if it doesn't come to. I'm just really careful and very protective of staff's work.
No, I appreciate that. As a fellow supervisor, I appreciate that, and I am fully on board with that. If you can get us comparables instead of doing the research, that's about equivalent. Thank you.
Can you take note of that?
Yeah. Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, Scott, you said we don't have a role in the police budget, and I want to push back against that because in the ordinance that establishes the police commission, we are charged with making recommendations about police resources. So I think that's integrally tied with the budget. My question is for the chief. How long has it been since we audited these sort of information soft services? Because if we haven't audited them or looked at them in a long time, there is probably value in making sure that they're commensurate with the way technology stands today. Whether or not we want to expand the amount of storage that we use, the prices of storage maintenance, database maintenance fluctuates over time, both in hard costs and in employee hours. So I would be very interested in looking at it from that perspective, whether or not it is tied to this motion of a concrete plan of action setting out.
I'm not quite sure I understand what the ask is. Sean, can you help me better understand that?
Yeah, the question is how much are we paying for storage currently, basically? And when was the last time we evaluated those contracts and
Yeah. Well, we evaluate those more frequently than you think, because you can imagine the amount of digital storage for evidence that we have. Axon is our company with evidence.com, but we have storage in a variety of different places. And at the end of the day, so much of what we do is governed and recommended through the city attorney's office based on public records, statewide public records standards. So it's storage comes in a bunch of different ways, both on premise and in the cloud. Like for instance, my PD Connect is stored in the Microsoft government cloud, the Azure government cloud. Evidence.com is in the cloud, but we have on-premise servers that have different types of storage for records. So it's a bit of a tough one to answer when you have so many different options. In this particular case, we would probably look at, and we could look at both. We look at either an on-premise solution or a cloud solution for these particular cameras.
Yeah, excellent. To me, that sounds like it would be something that would be very good for our next work plan as a police commission. We have a lot on our current work plan, and I don't want to get sidetracked and then have to report to city council that we've gotten 2 things that we said we would do actually done.
I appreciate that, Commissioner Shivers. Commissioner Booker?
Oh, just question. Chief mentioned something about the 30-day being like a state stature. Is that correct? Like a House bill or Senate bill?
No, it's Oregon Public Records Law. And so what Oregon Public Records Law does is it gives you retention schedules for a variety of different types of records. Everything from transitory records that can be purged immediately to a 30-day cycle, all the way to things that they would expect us to keep into perpetuity. Off the top of my head, I'm not a public records specialist. That's the city attorney's office is the ones that are really, really good at that. But it's Oregon Public Records Law is the one that would be embedded in there somewhere.
And then, so you took what they said the law was and then embedded it into the policy here?
What we did is we went to the city attorney and we said, here's what the cameras are doing. They're capturing day-to-day transitory types of encounters, whether it's in a parking lot or downtown or whatever. They analyzed the type of public record that is, and then they matched it with Oregon Public Record Law and said, based on the type of record we believe this is, we think it is a 30-day retention. And that's where we came up with 30 days after our city attorney made that recommendation.
Now, was 30 days the minimum, and was there a maximum?
We generally speaking, in government, we try to adhere to the minimum, because if we don't, then we end up with just more public records that we know what to do with and no place to store them. So generally speaking, it is a minimum, and that's what we'd adhere to, but that doesn't preclude us from extending it longer.
Okay, in that discussion, was the maximum discussed?
The maximum of lifetime, which would be forever, probably was not discussed just by virtue of the type of record this was. I don't remember the conversation, but knowing Catherine, she probably said, you have to keep it for at least 30 days. If you choose to do something longer, that's up to you, but just be mindful of what that means for your operations. And we said, okay, we'll at least do what the state law, what Oregon Public Records Law says we need to do.
Okay, so we could increase it in the policy, given that they did give a maximum within the purview of our policy suggestions. Right?
You could make that recommendation that you would like to see it in above 30 days, and then I would obviously could choose to or choose not to enact that, and it would be a variety of different decision points for me on whether or not that was practical.
Okay, I think that would be a good starting point, because then that could lead us into the whole budgeting aspect that you were talking about earlier, and Commissioner Shivers alluded to. That could be added to that discussion as to funds and et cetera. But given that in that Oregon public records, they did set a maximum and a minimum and a maximum. And given that we have policy recommendations, it might be in our purview to possibly recommend longer than 30 days and then go from there as to what your decision would be on the recommendation that we make. And then go, and I feel like that would be probably a good thing to do in terms of Commissioner Lemon's bringing up the only 30-day storage.
And I would just, and you're absolutely right. And I would just say that and ask the commission to be mindful of during these tough budget times, I'm gonna always be careful about adding ongoing costs when we're thinking about the significant cuts that we have to make
Yes, sir.
to operations. So,
yes, sir.
Just-
Thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Yeah, no, this is just, when we first started looking at this a year ago or something, this was one of our very first points that we talked about and discussed. And I do remember the discussion being along the lines of like, if you had a car accident or a pedestrian hit by a car or something, and they happen to be within the vision of these cameras, you would never within 30 days, have someone make that request. And earlier, Commissioner Lemons just mentioned that criminal defendants could possibly have access to evidence that otherwise would be lost. And so we're in a discussion that we had when we first started, and I do support a longer period, and I'm very mindful of the expense. And it's a shame to keep pushing this policy, but I would support a somewhat longer period that was reasonable fiscally, and I don't want to burn resources of the department spending a lot to answer that question. But I also am hesitant to say let's amend to 60 or 90 days right now and not know what the implications of that are. So thank you.
Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, I was just going to remind people, probably don't even know that we're walking into a budget crunch where we will probably be with an ongoing about 13 million plus $13 to $15 million budget shortfall in the general fund. And the general fund, of course, is police, fire, libraries, parks, rec, and so it's going to be a very, very tight budget. There's probably going to be cuts coming. So let's be very mindful of adding things onto the plate of EPD when the likelihood of it happening is probably not going to be very high if it in a budget cut scenario. Because unless we do a revenue measure and put something out to folks and it passes, those cuts are very real. We're way beyond trimming programs. We're at the level of reducing significant services like branch libraries and community centers and library hours and police and fire services, park services as well.
Thank you. Commissioner Lemons?
Yeah, and thank you, Councilor Zelenka. How do I say this? That's why I asked for the chief to come with like a comparable budget thing, and we met him, or I met him halfway as to comparables, so we're not wasting staff money. I do not think that retention of data is anything less of a budget item to consider. And you are a city councilor, you get to decide this stuff. But for all the reasons stated, like I'm still in my same spot. Thank you.
Okay, so are we tabling the policy again so that we can get a analysis on the financial impact of extending the data storage period?
That was my motion to table.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Table this.
Thank you, Commissioner Booker. Any further discussion on this before we vote to table that and bring it back again, as much as that feels painful for some of us? Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, I think we should pass the policy today. I think we should get it out of the way. And if we want to look at expanding the storage, I think we need to put it on our next work plan. that we send to city council. I think it's too far out of what we said we would do to pass it today, or to, keep this alive and tack it on rather.
So are you making an amendment to the
Point of
motion
order,
or
is
an
that was the motion.
alternative motion?
The motion.
I'm disagreeing with the motion. I'm saying we should not pass the motion to table it.
Thank you. Commissioner Lemons?
No, that was just a point of order. Don't worry about me.
This
Commissioner
isn't to table. This is to table the motion, not. This is Sean, this isn't to table the policy. We haven't done that yet. This is this change.
Then you can just withdraw the motion. We don't need to table it.
I think it's wrong, Counselor. I think let's clarify with Commissioner Lemons. I think they're asking to table the policy discussion until the police come back, and Commissioner Shivers is saying he doesn't want to do that. He wants to vote on the policy.
I thought the motion was to ask PD to come back with information, and that's what's being tabled.
Okay.
I think you make a motion.
I'm not sure. I'm wrong.
Sure.
No, Chief Skinner just agreed to bring back stuff. That wasn't a motion. The motion is to table this discussion until next time.
Okay. Did we have a second for that motion?
We did. Yeah,
I thought we
Sophie,
did.
Commissioner Booker seconded.
Okay. Any further discussion on that before we vote? Councilor Zelenka, your hand is still up. Your hand is no longer up. All right, all in favor of tabling the further discussion until we have the analysis, the financial analysis, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, please say no.
No.
Thank you. And any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion passes. We tabled this one again. And now we move into cultural audit of EPD. Chief Skinner, this is something that you had offered to open the doors of EPD, so to speak. And we were going to discuss more about how we define the cultural audit. Since you put it on the table, can you describe for us where you think this goes?
As based on discussions, what you heard from me is a fairly loud declaration that suggests to you that I am open to any kind of analysis of the organization that needs to be done, whether it's a financial audit, a cultural audit, operationally. We go through statewide accreditation every 3 years. That is mandated in legislation and state policy that we are accredited as an organization. So this stuff happens every 3 years. Sergeant Barong will be helping us get through our next accreditation. Can you remind me, Julie, when our next accreditation? I think, did we just get reaccredited? And when is the next one?
We are approaching our new evaluation, which will be conducted in December of this year, 2024.
Okay. And that accreditation process is exhaustive when it comes to auditing a variety of things. Specifically to the cultural audit, my statement was to suggest that we are an open book and happy to be cooperative with anything that needs to happen. I think if the commission is interested in wanting to do something around that, it feels like there needs to be a path where the commission could, with their council members at the table, make a recommendation that council or the council members bring back to city management a desire to commission that type of work from an organization that does this work. It feels like maybe that's the path, as opposed to the council or the commission making a motion that would suggest that you have the authority to commission a cultural audit of EPD. There's a way to get to that, but I think we have to, and the two counselors, Zelenka and Ye, can help me with that, but we have a tendency sometimes at this commission to lose sight of that. You get to recommend or direct staff to do things, or to recommend that staff do things as opposed to just saying you're gonna do this. So bottom line is I'm open if that's what's needed to happen, if the commission feels strongly that needs to happen, we're an open book, and I'm happy to help that effort if that's what city management would like to do with their police department.
Commissioner Lemons, you introduced a motion last month. Do you have verbiage that you wanted for us to vote on to send a recommendation to city council, or do you want to work on that?
I was hoping for some discussion, and I might be able to come up with that verbiage.
I know what a cultural audit is.
Judge Levin?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just heard a comment about that. What is a cultural audit? I think last month I hit on this, like, we're not human resources. We're not the professionals that investigate this kind of thing. And I'm specifically talking about CRB in the last year has reviewed 2 cases, one this week. And the one this week, it was so many employees from this building saying that, oh, everybody knows that's how this guy was. Like, there was no surprise. It wasn't the surprise that this conduct was happening. And so that should be looked at. And I said this last month, and I agree, we should craft something. The chief is suggesting a perfectly suitable approach. I think it's not us conducting or overseeing an audit or anything. I just want the city council and the city manager to make sure that it's not just on the police chief to take a look. Someone from outside has to take a look and see, like, how are we treating women and underrepresented members of this department. So yes, I support. And if it's a motion, it's to come back, have someone from the city tell us that we're engaging this issue, and then ultimately, hopefully, hear a report about conclusions, and hopefully not a positive one or improvement. So thank you.
Councilor Yeh, I'll take you out of order since Judge Lyman was addressing councilors.
I actually wasn't going to comment on that. Sorry.
Well, then I am not taking you out of order.
I just want to make it fair.
Dr. Booker.
Oh yes, I wholeheartedly agree with what the judge was saying in terms of bringing attention to this. When you have conduct and behavior that's not surprising, especially when that behavior is negative within an organization, I think that definitely has to be discussed, especially within the body of this committee. I keep hearing that you guys are off task. You guys are basically a lot of discussion about we're just policy advisors, and people are missing the community connection that's involved with what we do. We have to have an understanding so that the educational piece can be described at its lowest level to anybody who looks like myself or represents the community. So these discussions have to be had. These things have to be addressed. They have to be looked into so that we are able to construct the right policy around certain things. Point in case, a lot of times when we go through this policy, it's not addressed on where the information is being put into these policies. Like, it would be good to know that that measure we were talking about with the cameras is Oregon public records. So that's in parentheses. This policy is in court, in ordinance with Oregon public records. A lot of stuff is not defined. So bringing this full circle, it's very important that we discuss these things and look into the matter, especially when that behavior within the department is normalized. And if we keep doing the same thing, expecting a different result, think that we are all insane. So let's not be insane, and let's come up with a discussion and hopefully in-depth policy around changing the behavior and atmosphere within the negative environment that so many are already used to.
Thank you. Commissioner Lemons.
Thank you, Chair. And so now that we've had a little bit of discussion, first of all, I want to thank Officer Cardwell for being so brave, coming out and telling her truth and her story and giving me by proxy permission to read that into the record. I would like to make a motion for the Eugene Police Department to seek, and therefore that might have to go to the city to put out an RFP to have an independent cultural audit from a consulting firm specialized in bias, workplace conduct, but also that has experience with police, but take it out of the city hands. Yeah, I see you, Zelenka. Sorry, counselor, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but I do have to make that motion. So to clarify,
Did you want to take your turn now or give it over to Zelenka?
No, I'm happy to. I actually had a question for the police auditor, if she doesn't mind. I'm so sorry.
It's about time we have a question for the.
Come on down.
Come to the table. I'm sorry. You have to walk all the way across the room. I'm sorry. I actually agree with Commissioner Lemons that I think having a third party conduct it might be a really good idea. But I'm wondering if it would be something that would be appropriate to go through your office instead of the city as a whole.
Think, I see you.
Okay.
I'm also not, no.
I would say my experience is asking officers to come and give qualitative sharing their souls to me.
Right. I mean, we haven't decided on what the structure of that would be, but just like
we have previously done this.
This is what I was.
So
yes.
we do have a perf study that what was 2016, 2017. Because I remember getting interviewed back in like 2016.
Right.
Redshift. Yeah. So we've had these conducted before.
Yeah.
And it's been outside of the auditor's office, which makes it honestly just feel. I love Leah, but it's a little less scary than going to IA.
Okay, so I want to clarify, still having it be a third party.
Sure.
But that you're getting, instead of the city doing it, that you were doing it. It's part of your like powers around trends and like.
I think that's possible. I hear what Nabash is saying, that it may have a chilling effect on people wanting to participate. I think there's a difference between being asked to participate by the people who you work for and then me. But I will say with the Redshift and the perf reports, I mean, we had eyes on the perf report when it was, I think that's a public document. I don't recall seeing the Redshift report, but I would say these things have been done at sort of regular intervals in the past. And just Navasha mentioning that she was interviewed for part of that, like asking people to keep coming back.
No, that's a separate.
Is a whole nother, but that's my own.
I was thinking that your office has complete control of your budget.
Yes.
So it could sidestep our issues of budgeting, and you could just determine that this was important enough that you were just going to do it. But it sounds like maybe that's not a good idea.
No, I think I would definitely be open to partnering on the budgeting of it. To the extent that we can help each other out that way.
And we do want to be mindful, right? Like of members. Like I talked to Leah about a multitude of things, but I also know that there are several officers that won't give a candid response because of the internal affairs or the police auditor moniker attached to it.
Good to know.
Yeah.
And there's a nexus there that if there's a disclosure made, Leah is gonna be compelled to do that. And so anytime we think about wanting to get candid, honest answers about what's going on, anytime there is discipline that might be attached to that, it spins up a lot of mechanisms and it shuts people down.
Yeah.
One of the really advantages, because of the Redshift report that happened in 2017, it happened across the city. It wasn't just the police department. It was several departments that went through this. But the nice thing about having that is you have somewhat of a baseline. So you can kind of see what it said in 2017. If we choose to go down this path, then we get a chance to leverage that and compare that to see if we've made any improvement, or are we having some of the same issues? And that would suggest that, same old, same old. So there is some advantages to having already had some piece of information available to us
Yeah.
based on the 2017.
Yeah, and I mean, and the perp 2017 definitely, because they had been called in around the time that our office was created, and so they had a lot of things to call back to.
Yeah, and the other thing I just want to share as we're trying to determine like what our ask is, that as a city councilor, if I'm going to bring this and say, hey, I think we should do this, I would like us to drill down a little bit about what we're trying to get, because if we're trying to get like our women being harassed, like, okay, that's like everywhere. Like I've never worked somewhere where I haven't had a negative experience of some kind with a male employee. Like that's just life. So if that's what we're trying to find out, we don't need to spend money. So like, what exactly are we trying to get? And just be, especially if we're going to go to a third party, they're going to want these questions answered. Like, what are we trying to get at? And then Councilor Lincoln and I can take that and we'll have something like specific to bring and say, you know, this is worth our time and money. This is what we need, what we want to find out.
I think it's also really important to understand that this profession is primarily male dominated, right? So while we can compare it to other professions and undergoing those common themes of like gender disparity, it's different in a police department. And I know that sounds biased, but it is. It's just, it has a different flavor when you wear a badge and you have a gun.
Yeah.
I do think, I mean, I don't want to take over the discussion. I will go back to my corner. One of the things we're hoping to achieve is getting the quantitative data from HR and working through that is to help with that question of what you want to look at. I mean, that's not the point of it, but we want to see what do the numbers say. And hopefully that could help everybody sort of move forward.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of hands up and 4 minutes left in this meeting. First of all, I would like to move that we extend 15 minutes. So to 8:15. Can I please get a second? Looks like Commissioner Lemons is going to second for me. Can we just move to a vote real quick on that? All in favor of extending to 8:15, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, please say no.
No.
Any abstentions? Thank you. We go to 8:15. So we do have to wrap this up in a couple of minutes. Obviously, we're going to bring this back next month because this conversation will take much longer than we have.
Chair, I apologize, but my daughter is sitting in my car right now. So I'm going to.
Chief, we don't leave our pets in the car. We don't do that.
My ability to exit stage left, leave it in your very capable hands about this discussion.
Officer, how old?
And, you know, I know I'm the chief of police, but I'm also a dad.
Thank you.
So I'm going to choose to be a dad at this moment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Councilor Zelenka?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I think it's very dangerous to take anecdotal stories and treat them as fact and then jump to conclusions about, you only heard a very small part of the story and we don't really know what's going on. And reacting out of that space, I think, is not a good public policy place to be. And therein lies kind of the conundrum here. That's not the role of the police commission. We're not HR, and we're not supposed to be, that's not our role. So with that information, what is it about, what is a culture audit? If this were to go to council, it would fail in 10 seconds because it's very unclear. There need to have some clarity on what it is, how it's supposed to be done. Why is it that we need to do this? What is the goal of it, the intent? What's the outcome that you're trying to look at or questions you're trying to answer? And then who's this recommendation to? How much does it cost? And then just the whole, are these things useful? Do they actually result in actionable information that the chief or the city manager could use to do something different? I don't know the answer to any of those questions.
I'll answer a couple of them. Anecdotally, I do think that there is something to say when you have a perf report from 2017 echoing a lot of the concerns that a lot of folks are saying to this day. So it's now 2024. It's been several years. And when those same concerns are echoed into today, I do think that is an issue. Secondly, we have, as the CRB reported, you said 8 different folks that were involved in an investigation. I think you have a lot more than just one. So I think there is a bigger issue.
Hold on for a second. So don't mistake my questions about the structure of the motion and the process with whether or not this is a problem or not. That's not the question here. What I'm talking about is
that's not how I'm taking it. I'll just be clear. That's not how I'm taking it, Council.
This is a question about a motion that has far implications and with a ton of unanswered questions around it that is without more there for this, it's not going to go anywhere.
What else do you need, Councilor Zelenka? What else do you need to put forward a motion in which a cultural audit is proposed to City Council?
What is the cultural audit? How is it done?
Cultural audit is what we did in 2016, 2017.
I wasn't privy to that. I haven't read it, and it's not part of our packets. I haven't seen it. What is it that, why is it that it needs to be done? What's the case for it? What is it that you're trying to get? The goal or the intent?
Issue.
How much does it cost? Are they useful? Those are all valid questions that people would normally ask. And everybody's just kind of jumping to, let's just do it. Like, well, what?
Get information on how your female employees are feeling at Eugene Police Department.
That's a totally valid question. I'm
yeah,
not sure
and
that
something like a first study or something to that would be helpful in addressing the culture here.
And okay, I'm all for that.
All right. Moving on, I believe the next one with the hand up was, good heavens, Commissioner Lemons.
Thank you, Chair. That was actually a very spirited discussion. Councilor Zelenka, just to have a little conversation about that. And so, yeah, we might have received one anecdotal things, but I think several lawsuits have been filed since then. And as Navasha just pointed out, this has been a problem since for a long time. There has not been, from what I understand, a cultural audit within the city of Eugene since 2017. I would like to understand why, and I really wish the chief was here to explain that. You know, and the police commission role, we are focused on policy, and that is our charge. And really, we are a very kind of I don't know how else to say it, but weak body. All we can do is recommend. So us recommending to Chief Skinner that he does a police audit, I guess the city manager and Chief Skinner are the only one that does that. But you know, I think we have a role in ensuring safety, supportive, and an effective culture within the Eugene Police Department. And that can be codified in code and in policy, and that is within our purview. Also, like, what are we trying to get at with a cultural audit? An independent view of what's actually going on, not someone who is signing their paychecks and they're probably gonna not say their whole truth. And going back to last meeting, you know, the chief said when you do an audit, especially a cultural audit, you will always find problems if you're looking for it. The police commission is looking for it, or at least I can't speak for the police commission. I'm looking for it because I want to find the problems to figure out how to solve them. So I do not see that as a bad thing. I'm so glad that the chief is willing to come back for a discussion about the cultural audit. The quote unquote ton of unanswered questions. I wrote that down and I can't even remember anymore because I'm a bit into this conversation, as you can tell. But you know, if our motion passes, it's still only up to the chief. And as Councilor Zelenka mentioned, possibly the city manager, I think we should do what we can with our role right now. Thank you.
We definitely will bring this back so that we can, for further discussion and hopefully get some expert input so we can make an informed recommendation to city council. Commissioner Booker,
Yes, thank you.
keep it under 60 seconds by any chance?
No. So if you need to make a motion, I suggest you go ahead and make the motion, please.
We still have closing
I
comments.
think motion was already on the table.
Okay. I think for Councilor Zelenka to make the statement that it gets shot down, kind of undermines democracy and the fact that the other council members aren't here to speak the same sentiments you feel. Given we have two councilors, city council that sit on our commission and kind of agree with each other along the same lines, I think we get kind of a Jim Crow era type of thinking. The Jim Crow era type of thinking when we
come on, Smokey.
Wait a minute, don't interrupt me. Don't interrupt me. When we normalize, when we say things, as Councilor Yee said, well, who hasn't been harassed? Why are we normalizing the behavior? Why are we sitting here thinking that that's the way things should go? And to say that us recommending something that challenges the normalized negative behavior that we keep repeating hearing, and it undermines democracy for you to say, oh, we'll shoot that down.
Not what I said.
That you did say it'd be shot down.
No, I didn't. I specifically said this isn't about the topic. This is about the process and the clarity of the motion.
Well, I think it's irresponsible.
It's very unclear, and that's exactly what I said.
I think it was irresponsible for you to say that without understanding where all sides are coming from, and to say something will be shot down. I think is irresponsible for you to say, given this context, and the public is able to watch these. This is not a political platform, and I think for you to say that undermines democracy. Secondly, when the officer was answering your questions as to what is it, how's it done, and you were over talking her, I think that kind of even shows we need a cultural audit just to understand just cultural decency and respect to one another. I don't think that asking for a cultural audit, is something that shouldn't be warranted or something that shouldn't be discussed or recommended to city council. And I think that statement shouldn't have been made on this platform, that it would get shot down. That's kind of demeaning and kind of making like our efforts aren't put forward to make sure that like our efforts aren't being utilized effectively to make the right changes to policy.
Thank you, Commissioner Booker. Councilor Ye?
Yeah, thank you. First, I'd like to make it extremely clear that I am very much in support of this, and my questions and statements are to give it its best chance of getting passed, because I do think that it is sometimes difficult to get support from counselors for something that isn't well defined. I think in the years that I have been on council, I can easily say that if you come with something that is a little vague, you are very less likely to get support than something where you can answer people's questions with more clarity. And I think that's what Commissioner, I think that's what Councilor Zelenka was trying to get at.
I think he can say for himself, but thank you for the clarity.
Commissioner Booker, Councilor Ye is not finished.
It's okay. I have always appreciated this group. We have difficult conversations, and for the most part, people act very respectfully. And I just want to remind us that we need to not interrupt each other, even when we very much would love to, and very much disagree with each other, because it makes it very difficult for all of us. And I will say, I'm not trying to normalize the behavior. As someone who has experienced it firsthand on multiple occasions, it should not be normal. My point was that as a woman, you often get asked these questions. And if it's just like, do you have these experiences? And that's the end of it on the shelf. That is not going to be, we should not be engaged in that type of behavior, right? If we're going to bring this forward, I want to bring it forward with, this is what we're looking for. These are our goals. This is what's going to happen with the information when we're done with it. Because if it doesn't have an impact and the only thing is, oh, great, now we know how bad things are, that's not helping anyone. And we want to have a positive outcome for this. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councilor Young. Councilor Zelenka, you had your hand up next.
So this is not about if we should do this or not. Or I probably agree that it's probably warranted. But as Councilor Ye said, unclear motions fail quickly because there's a lot of things that people need to understand, or you need to be able to have clear in order to say yes. And there's so much around this that so many questions that have yet to be answered, that to pass the motion like this it's going to land kind of with a thud, because people are going to say, well, what is it? How do you do it? How much does it cost? What are you trying to do with it? What are you going to do with the information when you get it? All that stuff is the stuff that makes this very unclear. The motion's it's very short, and my motion, Soki, wasn't about whether or not we should or not. I probably think we should, and I think there probably is some issues, cultural issues that we need to fix within EPD, no doubt. But crafting a motion that has a good chance of succeeding is just as important as the content of it. So this one, it's got so many questions swirling around it that it's gonna be controversial, and controversial things don't always pass. So if we stepped back, answered some of those questions, and had maybe a preamble white paper or a preamble paragraph that said, this is what we're talking about. Now we recommend city or chief that you do this. That has a much better chance of succeeding. But just the motion that just says they should do a cultural audit is I think it's going to be problematic.
We have 4 minutes left and closing comments to get through. In the interest of using those 4 minutes, if you have a closing comment that you would like to share, please just let me know. Raise your hand or something. I do have one closing comment, but if there are others who have a closing comment, we'll make time for them. Otherwise, we'll continue in the hand.
Excuse me, I've had my hand raised for a while and was not called at all.
My apologies, Commissioner Parham.
I just wanted to say that I am appreciative of the counselors to come out and say that they were in support possibly of having an audit, because today there were statements that were made by both counselors that diminished the stories of survivors of gender discrimination. And I also would like to challenge the counselors. Okay. I would like to challenge the counselors to answer the questions that they are posing to us as commissioners, since they have experience with what the council will want to see and hear. If they could actually, instead of challenging, if they could actually interject those questions so that they could help the commission come up with a motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Booker?
I'll save my comments for closing comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Lemons?
I'm actually going to speak to that last point, and I will do commissioner comments next time. Outside of, I'm so glad we're past the camera thing, but so from my understanding, and I don't know Robert's rules really well, but like I put a motion on the floor that you know, EPD is to seek out an RFP to have an independent cultural audit from a consulting firm not related to EPD that is focused on culture, racial interactions, gender and sex interactions, white supremacy, how to ensure diversity. And I'm sure other commissioners would have something to add to that, but I don't think we can move on without that motion being dealt with.
Is this the same motion that was introduced last month that was part of what we're discussing now?
And yes, and therefore I reworded it and made it into a more clear policy motion.
Is there a second? Commissioner Booker is seconding. Do we have to?
Well, yeah, if you call on me, I'm just gonna ask, please agree to defer, like, I'm gonna vote no if you make me vote right now on this. I would like to come back at the next meeting and consider the counselors advising us that we need to be thoughtful, and we can write, I'll sit down and write one, you write one, but to riff on it at 8:15 in an extended meeting, I really have a problem with it, and I'm gonna vote no.
Commissioner Shivers?
Yeah, I was gonna so I will roll my closing comment in with my comments on this. It sounds to me like we need first and foremost, listening to Naivasha bring up the 2016-2017 cultural audit. Sounds like a great place to start. So I think rather than making a motion now about how or what we're doing about it, the first thing we need to do is have an informational session on what that is. That being said, it's not on our work plan. We are accountable to our work plan. I think it's extremely valuable. And I think, there are circumstances like this one where we can diverge from our work plan, but we can't do it on a lark and we can't do it unprepared. So we need more information before we do anything on that. Also, Naivasha, as for my closing comment before I have to leave, I didn't get to do a virtual ride-along with you. If you're still offering those or doing in-person ride-alongs, I would love to connect with you. Please reach out to Holly for my contact information.
Will do.
Thank you so much.
Councilor Zelenka?
No, I don't have any closing comments. I do think this should be more thoughtful. And I put out the questions. If we had a preamble before this that gave some context and then said, like, I don't even know what the motion is right now. Scott, you said something that was much more elaborate than what you said before and keeps adding to it. And I think that's kind of the symptom of the problem that I'm trying to explain here, which is we don't have very much clarity on this. And I think if we step back and had some more thought about it, and in between this meeting and the next meeting, wrote some stuff up and sent it around to people so they could understand it and answered those simple questions, you could get a motion that could get passed with some clarity and had a good chance of succeeding down the road.
Commissioner Booker?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I guess a good starting point, as Commissioner Sherver said, would be the 2016-2017. So I would like to see if we could request that audit to be emailed to us before the next meeting so we can review it. If that's, I don't know if it's on file somewhere, if it could be emailed to all the commissioners so we can have access to that audit. And then we can add that to the agenda. With that being said, I do think I agree with the judge. I do think we need to discuss this more in terms of what this, so all sides have a firm understanding on a cultural audit, but I think we are very aware of what we're talking about here. But to be bureaucratic, we can start at ground level and have this discussion as to why this is needed and warranted. I stand by my statements is we have to get out of that's just the way things are around here type of mentality. That's what led to so much systematic racism that we see today before us. That's just the way things are done around here. That's just how it is. That's not how it is. That's not the way it's supposed to be. And there's always been that level of resistance, and that resistance is what's responsible for the change and the democracy that we have today. So let's consider that as we go forward and talk about this review that definitely needs to be done. But I definitely appreciate the debate and look forward to discussing this further. Thank you.
Councilor Zelenka, your hand's still up.
Sorry, bad hand management.
Thank you.
I'm used to other platforms where my hand goes down after I speak, so I don't do that. You do that,
Say
that's what
call,
in Teams.
is the procedural thing to call the vote on the thing? Can we do that?
Well, we left it open last time when the motion was put on the table. Can we leave it open again?
I'm not the Robert's rules.
Commissioner Shivers, can we leave the motion open, then bring it back?
Or can I?
No, we have to resolve it before we close the meeting.
If you want to do that, you just table it to next meeting.
Yeah, we'd have to,
Yeah, so can I, as the person making the motion, can I suggest that we table it till next meeting?
Second.
Great.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, we will table that till the next meeting. For closing comments, the only comment that I had was that I would like to see us come up with a certificate for late Chair Boggs to present to his daughter Jada. Since we've done that for the other former commissioners, I think Chair Boggs is absolutely worthy and deserving of our consideration as well, and that it would be a nice touch to present to his family. All right, fellas, it's been an evening, and next month we will come back with thoughts and respect and better adherence to our mission and to Robert's rules. Meeting adjourned.
We'll do better in person.
Yes, that's true.